Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have Tony Durso, I should say. That's correct pronunciation. Easy for me to say. It's good to have Tony. He's a top podcaster, one of the top podcasters in the country. He has the number one talk show on VoiceAmerica with over 17 million listeners. And he has 500 plus interviews to his credit of some of the most successful people in their category, whom Tony calls elite entrepreneurs. Tony's shows are syndicated on Roku, Amazon Alexa, and 14 AM, FM US radio stations. He's also an Amazon bestseller book. I believe the book's called Elite Entrepreneurs. But Tony helps millions of entrepreneurs learn from the success of others. He teaches the vision map, the testament to his success. And Tony says success awaits those who persevere and remain steadfast despite the odds. Tony, thank you.
Frank, thank you so much for having me on Expedition Networking, if I've said that right.
You have. Yeah.
I'm so pleased to be here. Finally, woohoo, I made it.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you taking the time. For those listeners, before we hit record, Tony was telling me he's moving from LA to basically just south of the Oregon border in California. It's a 15-hour drive. And so he has taken time out of all of that, packing up decades of living in LA and moving up north to the Redwood Forest. So I do appreciate the time. Tony, 17 million listeners, or 17 million listens, 500 interviews. How'd you get into this? This is an amazing story.
Well, thank you so much. My roots come from promotion, marketing, sales, advertising. I spent 32 years in corporate America, Frank, 32 years. And I just always gravitated to promotion, marketing, public relations, and so forth, never knowing my future ahead. And if I count my 10 years stint as a newspaper route boy in Chicago from the age of 5 to 14, I would say I have 29 years of being an entrepreneur under my belt. So it gives you a little something about my age there. And in the year 2007, I had the opportunity, Frank, to run my own company, Lead Generation, be the CEO. And it was a great opportunity because in corporate America, no matter how well you do, you know this, your income is pegged. I mean, I'm making comfortable six figures, but unless there's stock options or something else happening or whatever, you're kind of pegged at your income. And I saw this opportunity to run my own company as I could grow and expand more, which was fine for a while. I did that for 7 years. And in that time period, Frank, I had 4 major regulations that brought us down to our knees. Now, we're all familiar with that from the past 20, year 2020 and so forth events. But back then it was like, what? I'll give you an example. I walk into my office on a Monday morning and one of my clients, I'm doing $1 million a year in sales with just that one client. I had multiple clients and they canceled. Why? What happened? Well, another federal regulation came down. The attorneys got together and they said, hey, we can't do and accept marketing the way we used to accept. We have to retool. They shut things off. And the same with all my other customers. And it's happened 4 times in 7 years. I got really tired of it. And I was looking for something, Frank, that I could control that would not be so impacted on, when there's a new rule, a new regulation, not that we did anything wrong, just things change, times change. Look at the events of 2020. And Frank, I kept hearing this word called podcast. I'm like, what is this? And so I said, I may as well look into something else that I can control myself. And when I found out what it was like, hey, I can do this. I'm Italian. I can talk. But I didn't know anybody that was a very successful entrepreneur. It wasn't the environment I worked in. I didn't know these people. I had no audience. I didn't know any millionaires or billionaires. I just didn't know anybody. I started out zero across the boards, but I used my marketing knowledge, which I still use to this day, of how to bring people, how to engage, how to let people know I'm there. And I started finding people that would post on Twitter about whatever they wanted to post. I thought, oh, this is a good person. And I would start inviting people. And I landed the Canadian equivalent of Tony Robbins on my show, Dov Baron. And then people, and it just grows because, letting people know about the show, the guests start promoting the show. I start promoting the show. Guests tell me about more guests. Other people want to be on my show. And it actually grows. And now, I've just about plus or minus hit 6 years in this, pushing 17 million listens because I'm nationally syndicated on AM/FM radios in the United States. And it's the number one show on VoiceAmerica. It's a lot of work. You don't, as with anything, if you're a builder out there, if you've built something, if you've had a baby, if you've grown anything, if you've planted a seed, it takes time and love to nurture and grow something. It just does. It just, you put a seed in the ground. I'm being silly. A tree doesn't form overnight. You have to give it love. You have to work it. And that's what I've done. And I've learned a lot of the basics of successful podcasting as a result. And it's really great. If you're not podcasting, I highly recommend it. I believe we're at like 2.1 million podcasters out there, and you can control things as long as you can talk and look okay on camera. It's your show. It's such a great thing, Frank.
No, it is, and I don't think you're being silly at all, because I think you're setting great expectations for people. I'm with you. I just wish I were with you 6 years ago when you started on this, and I heard the word podcasting, and I'm like, oh gosh, and another thing, and I just didn't jump on it. And then I kind of embraced it as a way of sharing knowledge and like you say, creating an audience. It's really a fascinating thing. But there are 2 million people who are podcasting. I'm guessing that a year from now, many of those people will be out of it. Because they do 7 episodes. It didn't change their world. Hey, you told me to podcast. It would be a great thing, but it didn't do anything for me. Well, you didn't do anything. You put 7 episodes out, and that's it.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. And I've coached people, and some of my students have gone on to 2-3 million downloads over the past couple of years. There's everybody can figure everything out eventually. There's no question. But it takes so long, and we learn from the experience of others. And I have learned enough to really shorten that time to get and create and build and have a world-class podcast. It takes time, but yes, we can all do that if we really put our efforts into it. And what I've learned on promotion, sales, marketing over the years in corporate America, as well as an entrepreneur, have really helped a lot in what I do. And and on the podcasting, unfortunately, there's a word in the dictionary now, Frank. It's called pod fade, because the average person does 7-10, and I know them and I've seen them come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, I don't know the numbers last year, but 2 years ago, Blueberry said the average podcast, 75% of podcasters will no longer podcast in the next year. And I think it's far worse after the events of 2020, even though a lot more people are coming on to try, because there's frustration and you've got to do something, especially with what's going on, because And I'm not a naysayer, but how secure is your job?
Yeah.
I've been in corporate America, and 3 times, all of a sudden, including on a Friday afternoon at 3 or 4 o'clock, the company's sold and you're out of a job. It just happens. I've been laid off 3 times in corporate America, and as steady and as indispensable as you think you are, I think a lot more people are podcasting or see it as a way to help offset that anxiety, perhaps that fear of, are they going to have a job next week?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I tell people that podcasting has opened doors I didn't know existed.
Oh, yeah.
I've met people, I'm sure you have. I don't have anywhere near 500 interviews at this point. I'm less than half. And I love doing it. Yeah, it takes time. I love doing it. And I intend to continue, but I can't imagine. Well, I like to imagine the people you have talked to.
That's a great point. And you mentioned something about that earlier that I'd like to comment on. And that is, I didn't know anybody in this field. And today I know so many people, and I am friends with millionaires and billionaires. As a matter of fact, I'm working on starting a new company, and I just sent out one email to one person who I believe would be interested in what I'm doing. And boom, first meeting. Now it's going to the second meeting. Doors open when you podcast. Now, it's not a matter of, using power unwisely. You have to know who you're dealing in, their protocol and how things work. But you get to meet so many people in the field that you're podcasting. It's wonderful, especially if you podcast and you take on guests, and it's just, there's just so many good people that I've run into that I didn't know. So yes, it's opened a lot of doors for me.
Yeah, no, it's and you just have to keep after it. You just have to keep after it, and obviously you've learned things along the way. I mean, the one thing, Durso, did I say that correct? Am I getting closer?
Well, just, there's no wrong way to say it.
Okay. Well,
Durso is the American way, and Durso is the Italian. So Durso
okay.
works just as fine.
Well, but the point I wanted to make is that you learned along the way that the way Durso is spelled, it's D''URSO, and you learned along the way that was not Google friendly, I guess would be the term.
It was not search engine friendly at all.
Yeah.
I couldn't even find myself. So I take off the apostrophe, and now if you search my name, I'm on the first 20,000 pages. I'm just kind of making that up, but it's just
Right.
boom, boom, boom. My shows,
Right.
all my shows, I'm all right there.
But it's just, again, it's a learning process, right? And you didn't figure that out show 3. You probably figured that out show 30. I don't know. It was somewhere along the way. And you probably kicked yourself. I'm like, oh my gosh. But that's it's all great stuff. Podcasting's great. It's great for meeting people. Have a podcast, get on people's podcasts. It's a wonderful way to meet people. And I think Tony's just a living example of that. But let's talk about you and the things you're doing and the things you work with your clients. Yes, you have a podcast. But I think your real claim to fame is helping all these other people with podcasts. And if you want to share about the services you have, and that would be great.
Sure, I'd be glad to. I have in the past taken on and helped podcasters by mentoring them and to grow a big show. And it's a lot of work to mentor someone and coach someone. You may be a coach in the audience, and it's a work. It can be a full-time job, but so you have to, in a way, limit yourself what you're coaching if it's not your full-time job. So I've coached quite a few people and have done very well. And I've kind of expanded, the one thing people need, of course, my clients always have email access to me. So it's kind of like secret coaching here, but I've worked out using what I know on how to market and bring visitors. And I can bring a lot of visitors, real organic people. Well, I have a huge social media following on multiple key networks. And I use that when I do social media posts, I get a lot of responses, and I'm serious. I can get 10,000 people a week listening to your podcast. This is just when you get at that kind of level and you know how to swing it, which may not be the right word, but you know what to
Yeah.
do and how to put it all together. It just kind of really works. And I've made that into a business. If you go to TonyDurso.com/clicks, CLICKS, you'll read about it. And a new page is coming up because I've now expanded just a little bit more, and I can grow your Instagram followers. Now, there's 4 ways to do Instagram followers. 3 of them are tricks, and they're not real people. And I could do a whole class on that. The way I get you Instagram followers is I post it on my social media and let the person decide to join and follow you or not. All this other stuff there's just trickery and fakery. And so the only way is if somebody says, oh, I want to join this person, click. That's the way I do it. And I'm starting to grow Instagram followers. And that's the way, if you podcast, that's how you would get people. I do social media posts. People go, oh, Frank, again, I like to listen to his show. Click. And now, and there's no trick. It's the person is doing it. And so that's how I generate. And there's so many other ways to do it, but this is how I do it. And I can grow a lot of podcasters. We've got the potential.
I guess a quick question. Do you work with established podcasters, new podcasters, a combination of both?
I'll work with whoever needs my help.
Okay.
Big, giant podcasts may not necessarily need, want, or care for another 5 or 10,000 listeners or downloads a week. They may per episode, but the new person may want 1,000, may want 2,000. Oh, and I help try to give those people a leg up. So there's the niche or the niche of what I like to help. And along the way, with my clients, I'm always happy to answer questions and give some tips and advice as well. There's no charge for that.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. What's a great way for people to get a hold of you? I was going to put your URL with the /clicks in there as well. Can people get a hold of you through there? Is that?
Yes. If you go to the bottom of the page, there's a contact form. There's also a contact form on my main page. And also at TonyDurso.com, the URL is every single show I've ever done, all the way back to the original days when it was, live on Blog Talk Radio 6 years ago.
Right.
Where, if you go to Apple or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever, you don't necessarily get all the shows all the way back. So there's the full and complete archives are there.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Oh, please. I love it.
Yeah. Favorite or most memorable interview? You're like the Larry King. Oh, the last one. Okay.
Well, the reason I say that, and I know my wife will maybe listen to this eventually, but every time I do an interview, I really put everything into it. And when I'm done, it's like, wow, that was the best interview I've ever done in my life. It was, and I always work to make the next one better. And that's just how I am. So my last interview, is always my best. I've interviewed so many, people, thankfully, and I'm grateful to God for everything working so well.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Safe travels on your move up north. Let's stay in touch, and we'll talk again.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Frank. I really appreciate it.
To wrap things up, remember, we're looking for some enterprising business types to join our team as franchisees of AmSpirit Business Connections. Our franchisees work with entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals in their area to help them become more successful through networking and the exchange of quality business referrals in a structured weekly morning meeting. This is a unique franchise opportunity, you see, because these meetings are in the morning. A successful business type or professional can add this franchise opportunity onto what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, these franchisees work the AmSpirit Business Connections model. The rest of the time, they're attorneys, accountants, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. The wonderful thing is that not only do our franchisees realize a financial gain from operating the AmSpirit Business Connections model, but the business networks that they build and develop become a great source of referrals for their primary business as well. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you are that someone. Whatever the case, to learn more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, please contact me using the email in the show notes or the one we provide at the end of this program.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.